Good morning, afternoon, or evening, ladies and gentlemen, all in crypto here, and welcome back, guys, for another daily cryptocurrency market update. Every single day at 1 p.m. If you are new around here, we release a market update where we don't just cover the cryptocurrency markets and all the great and wonderful things happening within them and look at the crypto-related charts, but we also look further afield at the kind of what you would call macroeconomic context of things. We look at other markets to try and help us work out where our small but very significant market is heading and to become significantly more significant, I might add. This is a market at 1 trillion, just over $1 trillion in terms of market cap, that is going to get to the tens of trillions. And there's going to be some amazing opportunities in that journey. And I'm here to share that with you guys and report on it daily. As always, we've got a lot to get into. I just want to talk about the markets really to start things off and how they're not making a lot of sense to a lot of people. We've got some pretty horrific sort of data spreads, which I think the bears are very much latching onto. And the argument to this that we've sort of put forward is actually you want to buy when things look pretty bleak. When everything looks hunky-dory and when all the news flows are great, typically, it's a late kind of trade, if you will. But when things are typically bad, at in some cases what we've seen 40-year lows or 40-year highs, actually typically that is not the worst time to buy, and this is really what we've been taking advantage of despite all of this. And this is why I think markets don't make a lot of sense. If you look at credit, for example, if you look at the interest rate, the kind of strains that debt is putting on everyone, if you look at housing, if you look at certain areas, it paints a very bleak picture. But despite that, and this is why the charts are king and the kind of news flow is, in my opinion, massively secondary. Despite that, we've had an absolutely sensational year for the stock market. And there is absolutely no denying or doubting this. The Nasdaq's nearly at our target. We had Microsoft perfectly hit our target and actually look and take and pull back. Got a lot of stocks that we think are doing exceptionally well. If you look at Meta, for example, since November, Meta is up 267%. That is very contradictory. What's going on here to the kind of news flows and the doom and gloom kind of outlooks. And this is how markets work. This is why economists make the worst investors that there are, because it often doesn't make sense from a kind of economic view. And you need to kind of disassociate yourselves from that view and look at what the charts are telling you. And we've been very right on looking at the charts. We've been long the stock market since the start of the year, even long things like gold, of course, Bitcoin, crypto, and been largely validated in those views. But I do think a crash is coming. I do think when you look at the stock market, there is going to be gravity coming into effect at some point. I just actually kind of agree with David Hunter, who we were largely against in 2022, saying we think he's wrong on this kind of that markets are going to go up from here. Of course, markets went down for the majority of 2022. And now we're actually saying, we can see merit in what he's saying. Not just because we have an inverse head and shoulders here. We think this is a stage 2 breakout that obviously started from the 4100 level. And ultimately, we do have a projected target there. We've also got a kind of macro backdrop of interest rates, which are set to go sideways at some point. I've seen a lot of horrific takes on interest rates where people have looked at the federal fund rate and they've compared, see if we can actually find the Fed funds right here. They've compared, previous pivots, which I don't think the Fed goes straight into a pivot, by the way. I think that they are ultimately going to go through a sideways period, and there's been no sideways period for the past 40 plus years where actually the market hasn't gone up during a sideways period after a aggressive tightening cycle. They're focusing on this part here, which I think comes later. There are exceptions, of course, with pivots where the market has gone up, but I do think a pivot's negative. I think we've got the yield curve to contend. We've got so much to look out for moving forwards, but the main objective here is I don't think that comes until later on down the line. I think the bears eventually will be right and a crash will come, but it could be 24 months down the line. A lot of this, central banks are very good at kicking the can down the road, and I think they're going to continue to do that. So we still remain bullish on the crypto space. We think you are just about to enter a similar kind of phase that we've already seen for the stock market. This is the NASDAQ 100, and you can see it very much leads the way and outperforms Bitcoin. And you can see that was certainly the case recovering from the sort of March 2020 lows. You can see it was doing well whilst we were sort of consolidating in 2019. And this is historically the case. And you are going to get this next leg up. Not only do we have technical targets for it, but we have what we think is a macro context. We've got lots of things happening that are very bullish for the entire crypto space, like ETFs, for example. This was recently from Grayscale. They're basically begging the SEC to approve all spot Bitcoin ETFs at the same time. Reason being, of course, is, if they don't, then one will get that sort of first mover advantage. And these guys were kind of one of the first on it. And of course, they're in a lawsuit with the SEC. Interesting things going on as well. House of Financial Services Committee passes bill protecting rights to self-custody. We'll talk about the ECB. I want to pull up Gert van Lagen's Twitter here because he's been putting some really interesting things up, certainly in regards to, and it kind of almost confirms, and you're always looking to do that, I think, if you do have a bias. I'm not the biggest fan of schematics, but I can very much see a kind of parabola coming for Bitcoin and crypto, and this kind of blow off. I also see it for the stock market. And if you look at prior cycles, this is the really interesting thing. We are actually very much following the 4-year cycle theory. We're very much following prior cycles, which I find very interesting, considering all the different variables that we have. There's some really interesting things coming out in regards to where we are and potentially where we're going. So shout out to Gert. Go and check his Twitter out. He's got some interesting things on there. I do believe that he was bullish throughout 2022. So there are people that have not stopped being bullish on the market, that are kind of believers. But all the same, I do think this is certainly interesting. And we are kind of pretty much following the Bitcoin 4-year cycle theory to pivot back into the Brave New Liquid Coin Index. If we go on a monthly time frame, put the draw back on. We got an auto. You can see this. And actually, the real parabolic move happens typically after the halvening, but you do quite well leading up to it. And we've seen that happen thus far. It looks like almost a textbook cycle, which is both annoying and comforting at the same time. So I think markets don't make a lot of sense to a lot of people. However, we do, just like we've got bad data, we had very high inflation at around about 9%. And we've been trending down since in the United States, and the UK is still a pretty awful situation. But we're now getting back down to good levels in terms of inflation, or okay levels, better than they were, I should probably say. Key Fed inflation rate falls to lowest annual level in nearly 2 years. Again, this is why we think largely rate hikes are coming to an end. We didn't think they'd potentially continue to hike, although it looked very obvious going into the last hike with a 99+% possibility of it from the CME group. But ultimately, again, the context of pausing of hikes, not necessarily a pivot, we think markets do very well on that. And we've got a lot of other data to kind of suggest that. We've also got Google, Microsoft, and Meta. Can't stop talking about AI. We did speak about the stock market going to new all-time highs when the stock market was, right down here. And we got laughed at, essentially, for that view. And we said that actually, not only technically are we suggesting that could be the case, we actually think that fundamentally that could be the case, and not just from a kind of macro context, but also from a kind of narrative context of AI. And this has largely been playing out. I think the S&P still has a while to go. The NASDAQ, again, has pretty much hit was close to our target. Look at these stocks. And we also pointed out the VIX yesterday. Lots of people throwing up 2008 schematics of the VIX and saying it's about to play out again. They've been absolutely crushed. You've even got stocks such as, AMC, Entertainment Holdings, starting to show a little bit of life, which is certainly going to be interesting. So we ultimately still assess that you've got a real window of opportunity still ahead of you. If you look at where your altcoins are, they're significantly further behind than Bitcoin. However, they will catch up and outperform, in my opinion. That's a bet that I've personally taken, that altcoins outperform Bitcoin. It's why we're more heavily in altcoins than we are Bitcoin. But that's just my own personal preference. We looked at actually volume by price the other day, and we said, actually, this, to get to these targets, it's not going to take a lot because you've got very thin volume here, and you'll often go straight through that because you've not got a lot of historical price action. The 30K level is big, You can see this where we're currently consolidating. Once you go through that, you're going to do it in a fast period, and that's going to really tilt the market. You've still got a lot of people, I think, on the sideline. A lot of people went for this 30k level. They all get on the right side of it once it's taken, and you will take it, in my opinion. You're very much doing what we set out for it in regards to TradingView's new system is winding me up. But you're very much doing what we had sort of set out and said, look, you do this, you range, you get a sort of final low, maybe this is it, and then you see that upside. Maybe that starts next week. We had an interesting week. Stock market's being sort of in and out in terms of this week. We've had a dollar, lots of economic data. The dollar did a lot better than I expected. We expected it to sort of roll here. It initially did, and then it got a bounce on the GDP. And of course, the ECB, where are you? Talking about, potentially halting interest rates, and certainly halting them on reserves, comes shortly after a research paper from the St. Louis Fed prescribes a similar pill for the US. So they're changing the kind of banking system. European Central Bank will stop paying banks for the money they are required to keep at the institution as a minimum reserve, a surprise move that could cut billions from lenders' interest income. Very interesting. So there's a lot going on. Crypto is absolutely winning. If you look at it from a legislative point of view, if you look at it in regards to lawsuits, weekend you're probably not going to get a lot going on, but then you'll get a lot happening sort of Sunday when your futures market opens going into Monday, and it could be another interesting week. But we'll cover the week ahead on Sunday. We still absolutely assess this as a bull market, guys, and I think people are kind of doubting that because of the headlines and the fact that markets don't make a great deal of sense. But Bitcoin is up 88% this year, pretty much alone. And actually, the stock market is done significantly better. It's been a great year. It's been a bull, really all around, and we've still got a lot more bullish action to come for the likes of gold, which will, I believe, see upside. I think this is a big bull flag, and I think this takes 3,000. Bounced off it, we'll see. Once these levels get taken, like Bitcoin with its 30k, very similar situation, you're going to have full steam ahead. We did look at Michael Burry's comment saying maybe the market may have a bit of a pullback. We actually saw a little bit of merit in that, actually, because, again, I just want to quickly reiterate this. You've done a lot, okay? You will have pullbacks. I think pullbacks are to be taken advantage of. I don't assess that 2008 is happening now. Still seeing people throwing up the 2008 schematics. It's very different at this point, and those schematics have largely been invalidated. There'll always be a reason to be bearish. There'll always be a reason to be bullish. The task for you guys and for myself is to find out which one has more merit than the other, go with it, and make money off the back end of it. At the end of the day, anybody can... Opinions are... Everybody has one, right? It's like, everyone has, whatever it may be, a brain, right? So, well... what I'm trying to get at here is that everyone's got an opinion on the markets. I think the determining factor when it, or the winning factor when it comes to markets is who makes money from them and who doesn't. And that is ultimately a metric that you should weigh people up on, not just what they say, what they do. And this is why we've got such a sort of a beef against Twitter and YouTube, because nobody ever sort of proves anything. They just say a lot. And, they'll get some things right, get some things wrong. But do they make money off the back end of it? And hopefully, you guys are all doing quite well this year and got out of what was a pretty bad shitstorm last year. So on that note, I'm going to love and leave you. We remain long and strong. Very interesting things going. Crypto is doing nothing short of winning, in my opinion. We've got a lot happening on the kind of macro. I think the kind of economic narrative would, interest rates at 5.5%. And even myself, we had to pivot really at the start of the year and say, well, actually, the market's doing a lot different from what the narrative was. And the narrative was you can't have a rally in the stock market with interest rates at 5.5%. That doesn't happen. You don't get new all-time highs in stocks on the back end of that. But it's here. And this is where models, just like Plan B stocks to fly, which went completely out the window. And now he's back selling Bybit links and stuff like that. You've got to watch what the markets do and not what the kind of narrative and news flow say. So on that note, I'm going to love and leave you. Have a wonderful Saturday, guys. Enjoy your weekends, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Thanks a lot for watching. See you in the next.